Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Nerd Tube. And it's time to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, Season 6, Episode 3. It's Vader time. Vader time. Okay, I'm here with my wrestling cohorts, D Jose 101.
Yep.
And Gaz.
All right, guys, how you doing?
Doing all right.
Fantastic, mate. All right, so before I start breaking down this episode and talking about the moments that happened during the course of this episode, first of all, Jose, how did you feel about this episode?
Honestly, it was just like the Hell in the Cell Mick Foley episode, rehash of the same old shit that we already know about Vader's career. The one thing that I did not know, which we'll get into, is that Vader had diabetes toward the end of his life. That was probably the most shocking thing of this entire episode to me.
Makes sense, though, at the same time.
yeah, it makes sense at the same time. But beyond that, it was a good episode. But if you're a Vader fan or a WWE fan, you already know a lot of this stuff, so you're not going to learn anything new here. But having said that, it was a good Dark Side of the Ring episode. It just wasn't really like dark and somber like Ludwig Borga and all the crazy people that we've covered in the past.
Yep, guys.
I really liked it because I'm a huge Vader fan. So, because him and Sting got me into wrestling properly. Watching them to wrestle on WCW at 1 o'clock in the afternoon at my nana and granddad's house. It's a childhood memory that's there forever, and it's one reason that Sting's my favorite wrestler. Vader's not that far behind.
You're breaking up a bit, Gary. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. You said Vader wasn't that bad?
No, no, it wasn't that far behind. He was like number 3, and it's just good. It's just good to hear Vader was just responsible for some of my favorite childhood memories, the Vader Bomb, the Vader Splash, the fact that he moved so agile for a guy who was 6'3" and 350 pounds. I mean, you don't usually see that combination, and he was champion everywhere apart from WWE he went, so that shows you how good he was. I mean, there's some stuff in here I didn't know, which was always good to hear. I mean, it got really sad at the end and stuff like that, but I don't know if this is really a dark side episode as such. When I say that, is that it's not like that Ludwig Vorga guy who turned out to be like a white nationalist and all that shit that we had the other week. So it's I would call this more like grey side of the ring, if you've heard of.
Okay, well, I actually like this episode. I thought it would be very similar to the John Totera episode, but it wasn't actually because Vader really wasn't necessarily this one gentle giant like a lot of people thought he might have been. There was a lot of issues with Vader, to tell you the truth. And I will say that this is a dark side episode simply because not every episode needs to be about crazy people. It could be quite tragic, which is what Dark Side of the Ring does bring as well. And this definitely felt very tragic regarding this was the rise and fall of Vader.
Pretty much
was. Anyway, let's start this this breakdown of this episode. Certain things I'll bring in like HBK and obviously Kuwait, but let me bring that in before we talk about it amongst ourselves, okay? So first of all, Vader, one of the earliest prototypes of the original monster heel. I mean, he really was a scary individual when it came to his overall presence. However, he had a reckless style and the stiffness that caused him to fall out among his peers. Liam White, aka Vader, grew up in California in an abusive alcoholic family. They really didn't brush up on this at all. They just, okay, his family life wasn't that great, and they moved on from that very quickly. But there was a cool moment where he saved his sister from some people breaking into his house when they were living in California, and they were watching Star Trek as well. Like that, so that made me kind of happy because I like the fact that he liked watching Star Trek. Him being a naturally big lad. He was obviously going to get involved in American football, the gridiron, and he actually did play for the LA Rams.
Yeah, he did.
Quite cool. But unfortunately, like a lot of pro wrestlers who did play football, injuries was the reason why he couldn't maintain that career, and that's when he decided to give pro wrestling a shot. Leon White, that's his real name. He was known as the baby bull when he first got into wrestling. And one of the earliest people he met, and what a way to get yourself involved in the business, was with Bruiser Brody. So, and he, as the baby bull, he started off as a bit of a baby face because, you know, when you're fighting people like Bruiser Brody who are naturally going to play the heel because they're fucking nuts, you can't play a heel alongside somebody like that, even though obviously he was always destined to play the heel. But he did have an athletic background, you know, being a former NFL player. And he was doing things that you never really saw big men do back in the day. I mean, it's more common now when you see people like Ivor and stuff like that, you know, and Bam Bam Bigelow, obviously, you know, and stuff like that. But it was, and actually, Bam Bam was around about his time as well, but he was bigger than Bam Bam.
Yeah.
You know? He was much bigger than Bam Bam. And he was doing things like cartwheels, and which were not really things you would see of a man of his size. But unfortunately for him, because he got his early career in wrestling working with Bruiser Brody, he kind of learnt that stiff style. That's what kind of brought him the reputation that he ended up having. And he himself was given that stiff style by his peers, you know, Bruiser Brody and what was the other guy's name? Stan Hansen.
Yep.
And they would beat the shit out of him and all of that. And this was unfortunately a bad lesson for Vader to learn, because he ended up doing the same to his peers when he became a top guy himself. Anything to add, fellas, so far?
Yeah, so far I think you got it pretty well covered.
I'm getting some echoes from
I
these
think
guys.
well, I mean, like it wasn't a stiff style. It was just more. It was more snug than, and that's why wrestling's supposed to be. It's supposed to look like a fight. It's supposed to look like that. And the thing is that because WWE guys are so coddled a little bit, that like, and the thing is, you've got to remember that like the rings that Vader was doing it in were the rings that had been. Was it after when did he debut? What, 96 in WWE?
96 in WWE.
Yeah. So when he got into WWE, I think they just got rid of the reinforced rings then. So like the thing is, here he got a proper education, because you can imagine like if he's still in the territory days, so he's with Brody and he's with Hansen. They're going to teach him how to do it properly. And the thing is that like is that I mean, could his stuff have been safer? Probably, yeah. But the thing is that he was taught to make it more real. But you listen to stories about Brody and Hansen. They made their stuff look real, but wouldn't hurt you. And I think that's where the wheels might have come off with Vader.
Gary, I'm getting a real echo from you. You got any headphones you could put on?
I do, but I'm charging my phone.
Okay, fine. All right. So look, the only thing I have to say different though regarding that, Gary, is throughout this episode, Vader hurt a lot of people, you know, paralyzed people. So that style wasn't necessary. He got carried away, you know, without a doubt, you know, and that became an issue. That became part of his downfall, unfortunately. But let's get back to what it was. So with him now getting that sort of recognition, he got a deal in Japan, and that's where the Vader character began. And Antonio Inoki, of all people, who's a legend, by the way, is Antonio Inoki in the WWE Hall of Fame?
I want to say yes.
Yes, he is.
Let me look that up. Yep.
Okay, fine. Okay, so but Antonio Inoki, it's funny how in America they want foreign people to be heels. It's no different in Japan as well. You know, they want that foreign heel, and they got that in Leon White as Vader, and he comes out looking like some sort of World of Warcraft character, you know, and he's got fucking his eyes lit up and stuff. But apparently, this was like a Japanese samurai demon come to life. You know, that was the whole idea of it. and it worked, and it got him over. And he became really popular. And lo and behold, Antonio Inoki, who hasn't lost in 3 or 4 years, loses his match against Vader in 3 or 4 fucking minutes.
Not only that, he got squashed by Vader. That's
Yeah.
something that didn't. That's something that never happened to Antonio Inoki, because Antonio was always the guy that could put on competitive matches.
Yeah, so guys.
Just yeah, it was just incredible. I mean, that's the way that you build up new talent. Is you have them go over the good guy. If they're a heel, you have them go over the good guy. If they're a good guy, you have them look strong so that they can challenge the heel. It was just amazing. I mean, I mean, we're gonna get to the bull rope match in a minute, so we'll talk about that. But like, yeah, this is how you build a heel, and I love that design, the silver helmet, because when he debuted in WCW, he had that silver helmet still, and it always looked awesome when he had it.
Yeah, I agree. And he became the first Westerner to hold gold in Japan as well. He was breaking barriers, and he became a top guy. But then he had his match with old foe, old friend in Stan Hansen. Was Stan Hansen in No Holds Barred?
Was he?
You teeny whiners. You guys got the teeny whiners. I swear that was that guy. You know what I mean? The guy who remember what I'm about? Anyway. Regardless, anyway, Vader and Stan Hansen had a match, and these guys were going at it. And I think this is where Stan Hansen had to remind Vader, look, I taught you, you didn't teach me, And he hit him so fucking hard in the head that his eyeball popped out. It never popped out of his literally out of the eye. I mean, out of the
right out of his socket is more like what happened.
It was still contained by his eyelid. He held it in, but it was out of the socket, and it looked horrible. And that shit was selling, and Vader popped it back in, but the swelling was still there. So, it was badly hurt. But this is the sort of shit that gets you over. And for Vader, sorry, 1 second, Gary. And for Vader, not only did it get him over, he also won the match as well. What would you like to say, Gary?
Just absolutely amazing stuff. Like, you can actually see this online. I think they won't show it on WWE TV because it's like they have to censor it. But if you've actually seen it, it's horrible. Like you actually see him actually have to physically put it in his eye back in. I like it because he hits him really hard with those forearms. Because I thought he hit him with the bull rope, and I thought that's what did it. But no, he hits him really hard with the bloody forearms, and that pops it out. And was like. I mean, that gets you super over. I mean, like, it's basically like Steve Austin with the blood coming around your face. It's that level of that's a badass.
Yeah,
that'd be a pretty fair assessment to make. But we got to warn you though, I wouldn't recommend looking it up. Like, if you don't have the heart for it or the stomach for it, don't watch it. It's one of the most nastiest, violent things you'll ever see in wrestling.
Yeah,
ever.
For me, what I saw on Dark Side was enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to see any more of that shit. Anyways, he's a massive star now. He's absolutely humongous. And this is where Jim Ross, on the first occasion, now working for WCW, decides, we need to bring this guy into WCW. And he did. And Vader was straight away brought into the main event. He's fighting Ric Flair. He's fighting Sting. He's fighting Foley. He's doing moonsaults off the top rope and shit. Like, who sees guys of that size back then, do that level of, athleticity. I can't even say the word properly. And all of that, basically means that it wasn't long until he became champion. Anything?
I'm surprised that they kind of glossed over his matches with Cactus Jack, because Vader and Cactus, they used to go to war. Like, anytime you knew they were going to wrestle each other, it was going to be a brawl, it was going to be a fight, it was going to be a war, and there was a very good chance both guys could leave on a stretcher, because Vader, as stiff as he was, Foley was just as stiff too. And the difference between a lot of those guys that Vader worked with is Mick Foley didn't give a shit whether he got hurt or not. He was like, yo, if you're going to bring it, you got to really bring it. And that's the kind of chemistry that Vader and Mick Foley had.
Yeah, like this is when I start to get into wrestling properly. So yeah, Sting and Vader is my feud. Like everyone has the feud that gets them into wrestling, and this is the one that got me into wrestling properly. So yeah, there's a match of theirs called King of the Cable, is on YouTube, which you can get for free. I'd recommend you watch that. That's an amazing match. That's probably my favorite match of theirs. There's ones they had for the World Championship, but they're all great. But yeah, he had great matches with Ric Flair. He had great matches with that. He also there's good squash matches. He has. I mean, like, just Vader looked awesome. Like his moveset looked like it would kill you, and apparently he did. But his he would just like waffle you with everything, and that's what you're supposed to do as a heel. I mean, I think he won basically everything. So he won the TV title, he won the US title, he won the world title. I'm not sure about tag. I'm not sure about that, but he definitely won those two. I mean, the guy was pushed, and as I said, he's just one of the few big guys I've ever seen that moves super fast. I mean, they didn't show it here, but like he used to do flaming running, flaming. What's it called, sunset flips on people and stuff like that, and like used to do stuff like that, and used to like fry out the ring at people and stuff like that. It's just like this guy's amazing, and like it's just like they did a pretty good job, and I agree with what Jose just said. Like they didn't talk about the infamous match where Mick Foley told him, right, I want to get a bit of colour in my eye, and Vader starts hitting him really hard in the eye and starts like bruising him in the face to the fact that he's bleeding all the time. You also didn't talk about the infamous time when when Mick Foley's ear got cut off because of Vader.
Yeah, in Germany. Yep.
Yeah,
That happened in Germany.
That was Mick Foley, so that's why.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Don't catch his jack. Yeah, when that didn't when that happened, I was just like, what? It's like they didn't talk about that, and that's probably one of the most famous incidents in Bloody Wrestling.
They've talked about it in the previous Dark Side. I know they have. You know,
Yeah, they have. I think they covered it in the Mick Foley episode, actually, in the Hell in a Cell episode.
They brought it up briefly on that one. No, not that one. They brought up some of the other stuff that's happened to him, but they have brought it up in the previous Dark Side because he's been involved in so much, hardcore shit. Some of the, some of the wrestling promotions that just did crazy shit, and he was part of that. But look, let's stay on track, fellas. Okay. So like most wrestlers, Vader was on the road, and he missed the growing of his children, like a lot of wrestlers do. But funny enough, he did love the lifestyle. He loved being on the road. He loved, going to different parts of the world, and he probably, God knows if he was like banging groupies. I'll be shocked if he didn't. Wrestlers are renowned for banging groupies. Liam White, though, was disappearing, and the Vader persona was becoming more endearing. And Vader's wife kind of cryptically said that he was kind of Vader when he was at home. So was she kind of saying that, he probably beat her up, or is that what he's trying to say? Was that what she was trying to say?
I think it's kind of like Mad Dog Vachon. Like when you become that character, you become that character, and I think that's what she's trying to say is like Leon wasn't Leon no more. Leon became Vader. Like Vader was him.
I just got I watched this episode twice.
Mm-hmm.
And first time I heard it, I thought maybe she was mentioning that he got beaten up at home. He beat her up a bit, and the second time I really did think she was hinting at that, but we never really. Once again, it was kind of gone over. And I have to say as well, Rick, now going on to Gerald Briscoe, because he was mentioning now the stiffness that really started coming into play now under once Briscoe got involved in this.
Yep.
Saying about his reckless style and having effect in the WWE. You're pretty much a stiff wrestler when somebody like fucking Mick Foley's complaining about how stiff you are as a wrestler.
Because here's what he did. Let's see. It says that Gerald Briscoe said that we got through the list. He broke Sting's ribs, ended Koloff's career, gave Cactus Jack a concussion with powerbomb on the concrete, mind you. And Mick Foley was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And then here comes arguably the saddest part of the episode, the Joe Thurman. Yep. Yeah. Joe Thurman story.
So this is the same, because this is why I was mistaken for him being similar to, say, John Turturro, because John Turturro was definitely the gentle giant, and there were gentle giant moments within Vader as well. But he was also the big fucking bully as well, because the way he was Joey was talking about his match with Vader and how he was he was the way he would speak to him, prior to being paralyzed by him. It's like, what the fuck, like, like, why are you speaking to me like such a piece of shit? But eventually, he got manhandled by Vader. He did the power bomb that was not executed right. You can see the power bomb he did to Joey and the power bomb he did to Hogan. Yeah, he knew to treat Hogan like the fucking golden goose, and he did a nice, gentle, on the back, around the shoulder blades type power bomb. But when it came to Joey, he fucking gave Joey a power bomb right on his fucking neck. You know what I mean? And that's the dangerous thing about this industry. You're this close to getting fucking paralyzed. But guys,
like the flaming choke slam was rough as well.
Guys, you got to put yourself on mute until I finish talking, dude, because the feedback is really annoying. But okay, go speak now, mate.
I was just saying that the choke slam he gave him was rough as well. Because you saw him like literally fold up like a bloody accordion. It's like, ooh, that is not like both feedbacks were like, ooh. It's just like, it's because Mick Foley summed it up best in his book. Leon was a big teddy bear who cared about everybody, but when the red light came on, he was Vader. I didn't give a fuck, and you can see that in the thing, because Joey said before, and he said, "Are we going to make? Can you take the power bomb?" Blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden his personality shifted. He was like Jekyll and Hyde sort of thing. I think one of his friends mentioned that as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I kind of saw that throughout this, but Joey broke his back in 2 places, and Vader obviously now feeling regret because he's calmed the fuck down. He's now become Leon White again. Visited Joey in hospital, but Furman said, did not give a shit about his apologies, and then unloaded on Vader and told him probably what a fucking wanker he is for doing what he's doing. This is when you get carried away, and Vader did get carried away. But Vader's recklessness became storylines. You saw that moment with Steamboat mentioning what he did to Joey, and they used that. It's typical, wrestling promotions doing shit like that. Not surprised whatsoever. But eventually, the locker room, once you got a guy who's constantly injuring people, they had enough.
Yeah,
and
they're going to fight back, and then here came the monster called Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan put a stop to all that shit. He was
this happened. This is the first of 2 times where you're dealing with the Golden Boy. You're dealing with the company's top guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and in the first occasion, it was Hulk Hogan, and he arrives coming in there, top baby face and all of that, and there is no fucking way in hell, no matter how big you are. Shawn Michaels learned that with Hogan as well, by the way. But so there's no way Vader was ever gonna know this. No matter how big you are, Vader, you ain't gonna fucking top Hulk Hogan, And whatever Hulk Hogan wants goes. And you can see by the way that he treated Hogan with
how he gave him his finish. He gave him his power bomb. Hogan got right the fuck up like it was nothing.
Yeah. Hogan does that anyway, so
I hated that.
Yeah. But that's what Hogan does. He hulks up all the time. Like you get Hogan takes the finisher, not a regular, a finisher. Tombstone pile drivers, you name it. He takes that gorilla press, whatever, and then he hulks up. So I wasn't surprised by that. That's what he did. But this wasn't the beginning of the end of his career, by the way. I mean, this was a moment with Hulk Hogan, fair enough. The beginning of the end of his career within WCW happened when he was backstage and legendary Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, who had to retire because of injury with a bad arm and stiff parts, got pissed off with Vader because Vader was supposed to do a photo shoot. Vader said, "Yeah, he's coming. Didn't
move your fat ass right now, Vader. Hurry up. Let's go.
And Vader gets up like, "Who are you talking to, brother?" And Vader goes, "I'm talking to you, brother." And
here's the crazy thing. Here's the crazy thing. Yeah, Vader lost that fight because he came in acting like he was big bag. Paul's like, "I got one left in me, motherfucker. Try me." And Vader tried him, and it didn't work.
Well, you know what? This doesn't surprise me. Sometimes when people are a bit too big for their boots, yeah, you hear these stories. You know, I think it's happened with Goldberg. It's happened with Batista. You know, and with Goldberg with Jericho, Batista with Booker T. You know, when you start when you think you're the fucking shit, and you start disrespecting people, somebody will put you in your fucking place, and Paul Orndorff did. Yeah, he put him in his fucking place. Not only did he put him in his place, he put him off his place and put him in a place below the place because this was the end for him within WWE. You know, he couldn't recover from this. Once word went around that this monster heel, Van Vader, got knocked out by a fucking injured fucking no longer around.
While Paul Orndorff was wearing flip flops, keep that in mind. Vader got his ass kicked. Yeah,
there's a audio on YouTube of Paul Orndorff talking about it, and it's just amazing because he goes, because I can't do the Paul Orndorff accent. He's like, I can't remember where he's from, but he talks about like how you could hear the flame flip flops on the flame floor and all that. It's like, I'm very honest. It's like that gets rid of your aura quick.
Yep. Thank you, Winnie, for that. You know, mute boss man. Mute yourself, I mean.
But the fact that like Paul Orndorff kicked Vader's ass while Paul Orndorff was wearing flip flops, there's no way you come back from that. Mm-mm.
And I like the fish reference, you know, like when you get fish and they're all flipping around and stuff like that. That's what it sounded like with his flip flops. Yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And that was the end of his career at WCW. But luckily for Vader back then, there was still one more place he could go to. And it just so happened that Jim Ross this time was now working in the WWE. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he brings in Vader, and he comes in the Royal Rumble, which is always a great way to start your career, in my opinion.
Not to cut you off, but before that, here's the fuckery that Vince wanted to do, because Vince had never seen Vader before, so keep this in mind. He wanted to call him the Mastodon, and there was a U-shoot with Jim Cornette years ago where he was like, they wanted to call it, we could trademark it, he's the big Mastodon, and then Cornette goes, I said it's fucking Vader. He's a WCW. He's a former WCW world champion. Everybody in the world knows who this guy is. And then he came in the Rumble, and he got like arguably the pop of the night because it was like, holy shit, Vader's here. It's about to get real in this bitch.
Shows you how stupid like this one is. He's like the guy's been like champion like in Japan, been champion in WCW, been champion famous all over the world, and you want to call him the Mastodon. What the hell?
Yeah, Vince McMahon was. This is why as much as people want to praise Vince McMahon, going, oh, look how wrestling is like, and want to praise Hogan, like, look how wrestling's like, because Hogan, we have to give these guys their props. I've always said we will never know what it would have been like if the territories were still there and Hogan wasn't fucking burying everyone. You know, things could have been a lot different, but we'll never fucking know because this is the reality we've been given. Yeah, and this is the reality we've been given with someone like Vince McMahon, who's such a narcissistic cunt that he fucking had no idea that Vader was the top guy within. I almost find that hard to believe, but at the same time, I'm not shocked either by it. You know, how the hell does Vince McMahon not know about the competition? It's ridiculous. But that's how he is. But yeah, Vince McMahon, he had no idea who Vader was and didn't use him the correct way. And Vader was putting on weight and getting injury prone, and Vince sent Vader to a weight loss clinic with Yokozuna, and instead of losing weight, they were both in that clinic and they were putting on weight, but they were smuggling fucking fried chicken into the dorm, which is hilarious in my opinion. But when Vader finally got his shit together, he was having a feud with now the second golden boy of the night, HBK Shawn Michaels. And this was history repeating itself for sure, because he's the top heel or a big heel, nevertheless Vader, and he's dealing now with the top baby face of the company, which was Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels did not like Vader.
No,
win or nothing.
And I could tell you why, because what happened was they didn't cover this, but Shawn and Vader were working at a house show in like fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma or something, and then Vader grabbed Shawn's hair or whatever, and then there's some kind of hold or conversation, and then Of course, Leon loses because, you know, Frankenstein has to kick a few villagers' asses to get over. But when Shawn Michaels is in town, that doesn't fucking happen. So Vader rolls out the ring. He's crying. And then he goes up to Jim Cornette and goes, Shawn Michaels told me that if I yanked his hair again that way, it'd be my fucking job. So Shawn had it out for Vader from the very fucking beginning.
Yep. Well, more so, but some things you put upon yourself, like Vader was notorious for not washing his gear.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I mean, like, you're already dealing with fucking a bunch of sweaty individuals. The last thing you need to deal with is fucking the body odor as well. And I'm sure some of these guys do have body odor as well. But when it's reeking from your clothes, it's doubling.
I mean, because it's a pain. It's a pain in the you know what to wash your gear. For people who don't know, you have to hand wash it. You can't machine wash it. So you have to literally get a bar of soap or whatever and wash that shit. And you can imagine how time consuming that is. I mean, especially if you're up and down the road, 150, 160 days a year, or whatever it is the WWE schedule is, and you've got how many times you've got to wash your bloody gear. It's like, that's why I think I think wrestling gear should be machine washable. But yeah.
But let's get to
the. Not just that, but he should have more than one fucking item of clothing. You know what I mean? He should have
But let's get to the highlight of the whole fucking episode, because the highlight of the whole episode was the SummerSlam match, the burial of Vader. Yep.
I'm going to get to that right now. So this was as Jose said, this was our highlight now because in their match, HBK wanted to do an elbow drop off the top rope, and he wanted Vader to move. And the funny thing is that he never even gave Vader the chance to move. He just landed straight on his feet. And in a way, he kind of instinctively knew that Vader wasn't going to move. And he was right, but Vader didn't move. He landed on his feet. You know, Vader didn't attempt to move or anything.
And then Shawn's like, move! And then he kicks him again. Move, asshole! Move! And then he just... Yeah.
These sort of moments get repeated in history. Like immediately, I'm thinking of Kofi and Brandy. You know, stupid.
Yeah,
and all of that sort of shit. But yeah, and you know what? Not only like these weren't kayfabe stomps. These were real stomps. He stomped his fucking head. You know, and it's crazy. Like like HBK, he was a fucking asshole. He really was. He really thought his shit didn't stick. And you talk about people like living their gimmick. HBK was living his gimmick. You know what I mean? And being the top guy in the company now as well, he thought nothing could stop him until his back did. But regardless, that moment didn't end his career. It just basically pushed him down into the mid card because he was no longer a top guy.
I'll make a slight correction. That was the end of Vader's main event career.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. Yeah, yep. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. I should... Go on, Gary.
I was just gonna say, like and then you watched the shit he was putting over. Like he put over Al Snow. The Al Snow was literally leader of the job squad, for God's sake.
Yeah. Okay. But his main event career was over, but he was still working for the WWE, and now the WWE being as popular as they are, they're doing international events in countries all over the world, including the Middle East, like Kuwait, and this is one of those famous moments as well with Vader, because like the incident with Shawn Michaels, this is also infamous as well, probably maybe more infamous, for some people. They're on a talk show in Kuwait, and this is the thing now, because the talk show host he hasn't got the memo. Like everybody knows wrestling is fake. Yeah, the point is, if you have to explain that to people, then you're the fucking idiot, as far as I'm concerned. I still get people telling me, it's fake. Yeah, I think you're stupid. That's what I like to tell people. But regardless, Taker and Vader there, and Taker, I give Taker a lot of credit because he can control his shit. He doesn't lose. He doesn't go off the handle like Vader did. I bet Vader was, in my opinion, doing a bit of kayfabe with his with all of this, but he got carried away. and when mentioned that is this this stuff is fake, he grabbed the host by his
by the collar.
by the collar, by the tie, and regardless of how much strain he put on him, he assaulted him by that particular moment. He flipped the table and everything. It become quite scary. Apparently, some people wanted Vader to do something similar to that in the first place, prior to maybe not him grabbing the collar of the host, but definitely flipping the table to give some sort of sense of realism. But Vader took it too far by grabbing the host, and before you know it, Vader now is stuck in Kuwait. Everyone else has gone back to America, including Vince, and they've left him behind. And this is my issue with Vince now, because what Vader did was fucking stupid. Yeah, I'm not doubting that, but you don't leave a man behind.
Nope.
Yeah, Vince needed to stay in Kuwait until Vader was released. Use whatever fucking oomph and power and influence that he had to get fucking to get Vader out of there. And he didn't. He let him stew there for 2 weeks under house arrest. And Vader finally left the country. What do you guys think of that?
That was crazy. That was ridiculous. But I can, commend Vader to an extent for keeping kayfabe, but then there's a limit as to how you do it. It's like you don't grab the host. Yeah, you might flip the table. You might be like, this isn't fake, and that's all he had to do. But Vader went too far.
Point the finger. Yeah, point the finger at the host or whatever. Gary?
I mean, this isn't Dr. D. Davis Hilt, so this isn't Fabian like Hulk Hogan choking out somebody. But you're in a Fabian very totalitarian Fabian regime where they do not give a toss of one Fabian imprison your ass. So yeah, what did you think was going to happen? And I mean, seriously, I'm very surprised that Vince McMahon left him there, but it doesn't surprise me at the same point, because like he's your employee, he's supposed to care for his well-being, and I'm very shocked that his wife didn't find out until he didn't come on with the rest of the boys.
Yeah. Well, Vince does that. You remember when in Saudi Arabia, those issues.
Yeah, he left. Yeah, he left, and that made everybody else stay there. He was like, "Nope, fuck y'all. I'm getting on my plane. I'm getting out," and he did.
Yeah, exactly. And whilst in the famous plane ride from hell, he's on that plane and he's letting everybody else do the dirty work for him. Like when it comes to calming down, he could just duck his head through those curtains once and said, "You know what, boys, sort your shit out," or whatever. But then again, why would he? He's just as bad as them. We found out now with all those incidences. So yeah, fuck Vince McMahon. Even though Vader was an idiot regarding this. Yeah. So we're back in America now, and unfortunately, Vader's time, in the WWE is coming to an end, and it has ended to a degree at this moment, because Vince is now like, don't give a fuck about you. You're a liability. Shawn Michaels, you can't wrestle the main event, and you caused a massive incident in Kuwait, and now we're going to chop the fuck out of you.
Yep, and I can tell you the exact end because I was there at the time. It was Over the Edge, 1998, a mask versus match, Kane versus Vader. Vader does the job, and then he rolls out the ring, and he's like, "Man, Vader time is over. I ain't nothing but a big piece of shit, a big fat piece of shit." And you could tell that was the end of Vader, pretty much, because Vader just became a jobber to the stars after that.
Yeah, he's losing to Bradshaw and Edge and fuck knows who else.
Yep.
So yeah.
And not to fast forward or gloss over it, but Vader was like gaining a lot of weight, had like knee problems and joint problems, and he was a shadow of his former self, got addicted to painkillers.
When you're that size and that level of wrestler as well, and you're getting older, it's going to affect you, because he wasn't a lean guy. He was a massively big guy, and it was affecting his joints and all of that. He was taking painkillers, which a lot of wrestlers did back then, to get through, and obviously he was doing alcohol too. Like, it's a common thing, unfortunately, with these wrestlers. And once again, I'm gonna go back to Vince McMahon for being a guy who always exploited his talent, but never necessarily took care of his talent. And that's what he did. But well, even though he was, he was becoming depressed with his life because he was no longer within the WWE, and he still had years left to offer. And like, what do you do? Like, I can't go back to WCW. I can't go back to WWE. Just let me go. where do I go next? And and you think to yourself, shit. Now he did get kind of lucky because he got a chance to go back to Japan and earn some money there, get a payday there. But he was diabetic and probably for a long time.
Yeah.
And with somebody of his size, you're going to be diabetic. And whilst getting drunk out there as well in Japan, he went into a diabetic coma.
Yep.
And he did end up coming around and went back to America, but unfortunately, whilst in America, he caught pneumonia.
And congestive heart failure.
Yep. His son was talking about this, like I said, not being in the best condition. And he was brought into hospital again, which was really sad. His son Jesse did take care of him for the final days and weeks of his life. He would feed him and drink for him. Well, feed him, make him drink as well. Water, of course, nothing alcoholic. And Jesse started getting involved in pro football and all of that, and tried to keep his dad updated with his career. And at one point, I think his dad wasn't. I don't think Leon was talking. He wasn't he was verbally communicating. But at one particular point, he did manage to get on the hospital phone and call Jesse, saying that he loved him and stuff like that. And Jesse said, "That's great, Dad. I'll see you in a couple of hours." But that never materialized. And it was his wife who then decided, you know what, turn the machines off. I don't want my husband being like that. Even though I thought that was a bit premature by the wife. It's not like he turned into a fucking cabbage. Like he was. He could have recovered, but his wife thought, fuck this.
Yeah, but with congestive heart failure, there's only so much you can do before, you got to pull the plug. So, it's never going to be an easy decision to make. But she did in her mind what she thought was right. And I'm pretty sure Leon would have been like, yeah, if it was the same, he would have made the same call.
Yeah, I agree. Just to, before we give our final verdicts, just to say regarding Leon White, Big Van Vader, wrestler would say that he was a good man, but he had a lot of internal conflicts. And that Jekyll and Hyde was definitely there, kind of forgot who he was at times and got very much carried away. Far from perfect, unfortunately, and not necessarily always the good, nice guy that people assumed that he was, but who is at times, we all have our faults. So let's mark the episode. Jose, what would you like to give it out of 10?
I'd go ahead and give it an 8 out of 10. I thought that this was a really good episode. I'm just doing Vader is in the Hall of Fame. Went in 2022. That's another thing. Fuck Vince McMahon, because Vader is one of those names that should have went in when he was alive, and he never did. He didn't get to go in, so fuck. But overall, it was an 8 out of 10. It was a good Dark Side episode, actually, now that we've covered everything, and it was a good documentary episode about Vader. But yeah, I'd recommend giving this one a watch.
Guys, very briefly, mate, what do you want to give it out of 10?
I'll give it, for Vader itself as a standalone episode, I'll give it a 7. For a Dark Side episode, I'll give it a 6, because it wasn't really a Dark Side episode, I thought.
Okay, well, once again, I disagree. I thought this was a Dark Side episode. Not every episode has to be about craziness. It can be tragic, and there was craziness involved in this episode as well. This was a very tragic episode of a wrestler we all knew who had issues, and unfortunately, so many wrestlers do. I give this episode also an 8 out of 10. This was a lot better than I expected.
Yep.
I really thought we were going to get a John Turturro episode, but I realized, not every person's the same. And Vader was far from that. He wasn't necessarily the best of people. Not necessarily saying he was the worst of people either, but he had these issues without a doubt. 8 out of 10 for me.
All right. Next week we got Tony Atlas, just to keep the people up to date. Tony Atlas will be the next episode.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, regarding what he offers as a Dark Side wrestler, I have no idea.
Get your feet ready.
Get your feet ready.
Fair enough. All right, wonderful. Okay, guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube, the greatest social media channel you never heard of.